Good morning. Two more hands. Both of these hands have me calling a pre-flop two bet, and I believe both of these hands have me hitting three of a kind. So let's work through the hand. Hand number one, Queen 10 offsuit on the bud. We get one limper under the gun, folds around to the cutoff, who raises the four big blinds. Now with Queen 10 offsuit, I think it's perfectly fine just to fold. He could be, playing his standard range. He could be trying to take advantage of this loose player, trying to isolate him. So let's put together this range of villain 11. I have his stats at 23 VPIP, 12% pre-flop raise, 3% 3-bet. Positionally, when we look at his VPIP, he does play position, so he's much looser in the cutoff and the button. He raises more generously in the cutoff and the button, so I think he's going to have a fairly wide raising range. And I don't have any notes, but I do have over 1,000 hands on this player. So on this player, we're going to give him a pretty generous opening range, or I should say raising range. With this player, he is a winner. Have him winning for $40 at this level, and this is a 25 NL game too. When he gets to showdown, he's about 49%. So I'd consider this player more of a reg. I think with a reg, I think we've got a range like this that's probably pretty suitable. I think we could argue the ace 10 king jack offsuits may or may not be in the range. If they're not in the range, then I think he might be open raising with something like that. Maybe something a little bit looser. Well, in terms of looseness, going down to these, but probably not. I think we're gonna leave those in. We're gonna leave ace 10 and king jack out. We're going to leave king 10, queen 10 suited in. And we're going to use these small suited aces as part of his bluffing range. I do see this more at 25 NL, and against the right opponent, you can expect these. So that's about 15% right there, which I think is in line with his pre-flop raising range. Now against this range, my queen 10 offsuit is not going to be doing very good. See, my equity is 39%. More than likely, if I flop a top pair, so a 10 or a queen, I'm probably going to be behind to him. I'm hoping for a straight. But, what if we call to take advantage of this player's tendencies? So you can see, even though he's somewhat tight, he c-bets a flop 55%, c-bets a turn 47%. He tends to be more flop honest. So if we just call here and he checks the flop, there's a good bet that we are going to be ahead, or at least that we can take the pot away from him. And if we look at the numbers, that's 45 out of 82. This is 7 out of 15. I think these numbers are pretty telling. So if we're going to call, we're calling strictly because we're hoping to take the hand away from him when he checks the flop or checks the turn. But we do have to consider the rest of these players. So we have some looser players here. If we call, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if both of these players call. Their calling pre-flop two bets are 33%. Granted, small blind's only 20 hands, big blind 74 hands, but I think we're going to probably get at least one more caller. Maybe even villain 8. His call pre-flop two bets only 14%. With this looseness, he probably has a wider, weaker range, and probably that range would still call since he already invested in the pot. Again, 23 hands, tough to say. Uh, so I actually prefer just to fold here, be done with the hand, because we don't really want to go multi-way with Queen 10 offsuit. I didn't do that. I actually called, and miraculously, all of these three players folded. So we are now heads up to the pot, and the pot or the flop just hit me hard. 10 of diamonds, 10 of hearts, 3 of spades. We are going to be ahead of basically his entire range completely. And on this board, when we look at what hands are going to hit it, you're going to say pocket pair below top pair and above is only 40%. He's really not going to hit this board hard at all. So I'm expecting, I think I'm expecting from this player a check most of the time, because this player's probably going to be aware that a 10 hits my range. I think he's going to be more cautious based on if these c-bet flop and turn numbers were higher. I think we have to include possibilities that he's firing these middle pair, weak pairs, ace high hands, and so forth. So when he checks, I think it's going to be checking his entire range here. He's going to be very cautious and to see how things play out. What am I going to do? Well, I think here's the spot. If we look at it, I've got almost 80 big blinds. There's 10 big blinds in the pot. I know I'm ahead. His 3 of a kind with the 10 is 2.5%. I'm only behind King 10 and Ace 10 if he happens to have those. I'd like to build a big pot, but I also think that with this player, if I bet, he's going to probably fold the vast majority of his hands. So if I bet, I think he's calling quads, the full house, he's calling 3 of a kind, probably calling an overpair, but I think pocket pair below top pair probably is just going to fold. The overcards are going to fold. We're going to be up against ace, king, queen, jack, and when you look at that, this is only 17.5%. I'm looking for a better way, an opportunity to win more money in this hand. Yeah, 10 big blinds is great, but if I bet five big blinds, half pot, he's likely just going to fold. So I just checked behind, and the turn was a 3, and at this point, I'm kind of thinking that I don't really like that 3, because I don't think this is going to hit his range at all. Of the 3s that are in there, ace 3, pocket 3s, that's it. And I almost think pocket 3s might have gone ahead and made that C bet. So, looking at this board, if he has an overpair, I still think he's going to check to me, or I'd expect him to check. If he has a 10 or a 3, I expect him to bet. So he bet. I'm going to give him full house, top and bottom. I guess we're going to have to include an overpair. He did bet full pot. And that's kind of somewhat telling. Perhaps he's looking to try to get me to fold, or he's hoping that I call and manage a huge, get into a huge pot. So there's a diamond draw out there. I think the flush draw is going to bet that. So we'll include the flush draw. Are we going to include pocket pair below top pair? No, I don't think so. I'm going to include these over pairs, and maybe it's not all over pairs. Maybe he'll only bet aces and kings, and maybe check call the queens and jacks. But at this point, I think perhaps he's thinking he needs to build the pot and tries to win it. I think I would have just checked and hoped that the button was going to bet here. especially if I had a big card, because I think the 10's going to reveal itself pretty easily. So I'm ahead, still way ahead, 90%. I can raise here. I think if I raise, I give him a reason to fold aces, kings, queens, and jacks. So I just called here. The turn was the 6 of spades. Flush draw missed. Pot's 28.4. I've got 70, a little over 70. He bets the pot again. Now, 2 pot size bets. I think that is a full house, maybe quads, maybe an overpair. I think if he was hoping to bluff, maybe it would just be a little bit smaller, and maybe he is bluffing. But at this point, I'm still ahead of a big part of his range. So of this range, equity of my hand is 90%. Yeah, we'll tie. We'll possibly tie if he has a queen or with any 10. But, there's only one 10 left. So question is, if I raise, what is he going to call with? If I raise, he might go ahead and call with an overpair. Maybe not all overpairs, but maybe call with an overpair, thinking that I'm hoping for a split pot. Maybe I have the ace. Maybe I'm making a move. That's kind of a really strange play on my part. So I think at this point, I think he's going to be calling with all of these. Let's get rid of those with all the full houses and the quads. And if I raise, he's calling 17% of what he was betting. So he's not calling a lot, but when he does call, I still have 57%. So I think this is a decent spot to go ahead and just to shove. Hope he calls. He does, and he shows kings. So he was in that overpair. I thought he would only call with full house, and I was wrong. So let's look at kind of his play. Do I like the check on the flop? I guess in his mind, he's thinking that if I don't have a 10, that he's way ahead, and he's hoping that I somehow catch up. Once that 3 comes out, I think he has to continue that. I either have a 10 or I don't. So he's either way ahead of me or he's way behind me. So I think once he checked the flop, I think he just kind of has to check the turn. If I bet, I think he can call and then evaluate the river, or he can raise it. He decided to bet, and I think that's where he kind of gets into problems, because now what am I going to call with? Yeah, there's a diamond flush draw out there, possibly, that I could call with. But he had, can't remember, did he have the king of diamonds? Yeah, he had the king of diamonds. So he knows I don't have, king, queen of diamonds, king, jack of diamonds. There's not a 10 out there, or the 10 of diamonds is out, so I don't have the jack 10 of diamonds, the queen 10 of diamonds. I may have ace jack of diamonds or ace queen of diamonds. I guess that's reasonable. But once I call, he has to be thinking I have a pair or I have a 10, because there's really nothing else that I could call here. I mean, it doesn't even make sense to call with an ace high and hope that he's bluffing. I just don't think that makes a whole lot of sense. So then when the river hit, diamond missed. For the kings, I don't see a reason why he would bet. Because again, the only hands that are going to call you are going to be the 10s and the 3s. Anybody with a 10, anybody with a 3. Any under pair maybe 9s, 8s, because then you'd have 10s and 9s or 10s and 8s. Better 2 pair. I guess you could call those, but I think if I had one of those hands, I think I would have bet it here. 10s and 9s, 10s and 8s. I think those hands would have bet ahead of time. Just checking and then calling here, I think that's a bad omen for kings. I think kings should have just checked and called any bet. So I could have bet the pot, 28.4, and then he would get away with only risking that amount to see that I actually had queen 10. So I don't like my initial call on the flop. I don't think that was correct. And I'm not too thrilled with my opponent's betting patterns. But his kings definitely in the range, except at the end. I assumed he wouldn't call my raise with overpair, but aces and kings are funny hands. So, all right, that's hand number one. Let me pause, close this out, and get hand number two ready. All right, hand number two. I've got pocket sixes on the button. This is a 10 NL game. Under the gun raises. All right, under the gun, I only have 11 hands on him, but he has played 55% of the hands and has raised one. So 1 out of 11. So far, he has fired 3 barrels, c-bet flop, turn, and river. And that was basically one hand that he has done that with. So we don't really have much information on this player. So we're just going to do somewhat of a default open betting range at like a default. I think maybe 10% is probably okay for an under the gun player. With him playing 55%, maybe we could do a 15%, something like that, because he is loose. But I would kind of expect some of these other hands just to limp. So we'll do 13.4. I think that's okay for a loose player like this. We just don't have a whole lot of information on him. Pocket sixes they're at 47.5% our equity. I think the call's okay. It's somewhat of an unknown. We could 3-bet, but I think if we get called, then we've just built up a big pot, hoping to set mine. I think pocket sixes against an early position opener on the button is suitable just to call. We're going to have position, so even though we are set mining, we do have possibilities of picking up the pot post flop if he shows weakness. What about these other two players? These other two players are also relatively unknown. I have 8 hands on him. I've got 18 hands on this person. And so far, this person looks tight. He's got a 20% 3-betting range. I'm going to assume that he's not really going to 3-bet or squeeze. He's not going to pose a huge risk. And his call pre-flop 2-bet, 0. If he comes in, okay, whatever. Same thing with this guy. He really hasn't shown, he hasn't 3-bet in the four hands. And really at a 10 NL table, I'm not too worried about players in the blind squeezing. If they squeeze, I can just fold. When they squeeze, they almost always have a solid hand. So I call. Yeah, we get small blind calling, big blind folds, and we go to the flop. So I don't think this player's in the hand. But now that he is in the hand, what might he have? Let's bring in another Flopzilla. Alright, so he just called. So let's start with something like this. We'll give him the aces. He's 43-14 over 8 hands. We're going to do something. I'll take those out. We're going to take out aces, kings, ace, kings. Those are your typical 3-betting range. Maybe even jack or queens. Possibly jacks. But we've got something that looks maybe like that. He's in the small blind. Sometimes small blinds like these aces. Um, Maybe he doesn't have the king nine, queen nine. Um, 20.5%. I think that's probably a wide enough range. And I've got sixes. So um, let's look at our flop. So against this caller, three spades, you can see that with my pocket sixes, I'm going to be blocking a lot of these 7-6 hands, these straight hands. And with the pair, I'm going to be in pretty decent shape. I've got the six of hearts, if that makes a huge difference. My equity against this range is 68%. Against the pre-flop opener, I'm also going to be doing fairly well, 61%. Now, the thing is that this is kind of a dynamic board. So even though I might be ahead now, on the next card, I could end up being behind. Still have, a draw with an open-ended straight, but I do have to be careful that I don't, give my opponents an easy way to catch up to beat me. I have a vulnerable equity. So this person checks. I'm not going to say too surprised. And the pre-flop raiser bets, and he bets half pot. So what is this person going to bet half pot with? I'm going to say top pair plus. I mean, maybe he has 6-5. Over pair is going to be a part of it. I think he's going to have a flush draw, maybe a gut shot. So if he has an ace, if he has a sevens or 8-7s, maybe he'll have those. I think those aces are going to probably bet. Maybe a two-card backdoor. Nah, I don't think so. Our weak pairs, pocket twos. Our top pairs, our over pairs. Yeah, I think we've got that good. So I think he's going to be 81% C bets. Against that range, I'm ahead. I'm ahead because he has offsuit, or he has unpaired hands in his range. So now the question is, what do we do? Well, I think we don't want this guy to come in. I think he's going to be problematic, and we can kind of start to set up the hand, because if I raise, we've got 100 hands here. If I raise, I think this person is only going to be calling with top pair plus, your flush draw, and your open-ended straight draw. So he is continuing. 39% of the time he's going to fold the other time. And of those hands, I'm going to be at 50%. And again, if we go ahead and look at the next cards, you can see some of the cards that are going to be favorable to me versus him. I think there's just going to be a lot of cards that I'm afraid to see on that turn. So if I just call and he calls and we take it three-way, I think there's a lot of cards that are going to make me want to puke in my mouth. What about this player? If I raise, I still think he's going to call with the flush draw, maybe even the gut shot. I think the overpair, I think most overpairs are going to call, but I actually think like aces or kings are going to probably, raise over the top. Maybe even the flush draw is going to raise over the top. At this point, I want to get some of these ace high hands out. Some of these, gut shot hands out. Some of these hearts, hopefully out. Because, when you look at the hearts, he has all of those hearts. Even though it's 8%, I can't afford to have him call with a 10-9 and catch a 9 or a 10 to beat me, even though I have open and a straight draw. So I think this is a good spot. I have a lot of equity. I have outs. If I'm behind to a pocket pair, I went ahead and raised. I raised about 3 times his bet. So not pot at all, but I raised with pocket sixes and we get one call, and then he folds. So perhaps his bet was maybe 100%. Maybe he was doing with all of his ace high hands, all of his no mate hands. And then when we look at the hands that are going to call, he's only going to call, his flush draws, his, top pair over pair. So he's calling. Let's see here, take those out. He's calling 45%, meaning he's going to fold 50%. We don't know. So at some point, maybe ace king, ace queen just went ahead and folded. This guy calls. So we have to consider, what is he going to call with? Is he going to call with a gut shot? Now, again, this isn't, he check called. He check called a raise. I'm not sure if a gut shot's gonna do that. I don't think overcards or 2-card backdoor flush is gonna do it. I think you've got an open-ended straight draw. I think you have flush draws that are gonna call that, and then probably top pair. So your ace 5, you're looking at a 2, completes the gut shot. 7-5, 6-5. I mean, those are straight possibilities. So I think that's his range that he calls with. I'm slightly ahead at 50%. And we go to the turn. The turn is the 6 of spades, which was kind of an interesting hand for me, or an interesting card, because, yeah, it gave me trips, but it also completed that straight if he had 6-7 or pocket 7s, So what happens? Now, I'm going to say the pot's 49. He has 75. So at this point, we've got, a half pot bet will likely lead, if we bet 25 and both of us call, then we'll probably have, like another half pot bet on the river to get all in. So he checks. And I don't think the check really reveals anything, because I don't normally see a lot of people lead. I think if he leads, it may be with the straight. So I bet half pot, and he calls. Now, what is he going to call with? I think top pair probably gives up. So like the ace-6, I think gives up. I think the middle pair, ace-5, gives up. The weak pair, ace-3, gives up. I think the over pair still calls. 8s, 9s, 10s, and jacks. I think 2-pair calls. Although, I would have expected some of these to go ahead and raise at this point. Same thing with the set. If he has 3, 4s, or 5s, I would kind of expect him to raise at some point. But some of these players are going to be scared that if they raise, they're only getting called by a 7. They're only getting called by a 2. So they're just, they may take it to say, look, I don't think you have that straight. I don't think you have the gut shot. I'm just going to check call, check call, check call. The straight, is he going to call? Well, if he doesn't bet, he's definitely just going to call here. Flush draw, I think, still calls. Definitely flopped. What about the turn flush draw? I guess that gives him a way to call. And when we look at the hands, these are, at least for the spade flush draw, he's got 2-pair with the 5-4. He's got 7-5. So the straight, I think all of those hands called. It's just that flop. It's the hearts. And maybe he doesn't call all of the hearts anymore. So I think he's calling 95, and against that range, I'm still ahead. River was a 10 of spades. I should still be ahead. So against his entire range, I am. And now he goes ahead and bets. He bets all in, which is about half. And it's up to me. So the question is, what is he going to do this with? Would he shove all in, about a half pot size bet with the flush? Maybe. With the straight? I don't know. Uh, I think in I don't think he'll do it with top pair. I don't think he'll do it with an overpair, um, unless he's hoping that I was doing this with the heart, and now he's making a play. Two pair, just again, you've got showdown value. Um, so I think if anything, maybe he's doing it with as a bluff, or a solid made hand. So let's say a flush he hit, straight flush, and then we'll do ace high. So we'll do ace high, no made hand. What are those? Kings. So all of the missed ones, that's 20%. So against that range, I'm at 68%. What odds am I getting? So I have to call 52 to win. 147.6 in the pot. So I needed 35% equity. Is that right? Yeah, 52. Yeah, 52 to win. 52 plus 95.6. Yeah, 147.6. 35%. I need to win 35%. I'm at 68% with that range. If we take out the no made hands and only do the ace high, I'm at 44%. Obviously, he has to have the bluffs in his range, and maybe he turns some of the sets into bluffs. So if we add stuff that I beat into his range, then yeah, I think this is an easy call. I did call it. I had trips. Just kind of took the approach. I don't remember who said it. Maybe I don't know. YouTube personality says you never fold trips. Never fold trips. Uh, I took that to heart. Called, and he shows jacks. So he had jacks in his overpair. It kind of comes down to the overpair. So we had the overpair in his range, and it came down to what is this bet representing. So I think in his mind, maybe his bluff was overpair, two pair, and above. So he took the jacks as a bluff instead of as a value bet. And even if he did that with jacks, he's going to probably do it with two pair and a set too. So I'm at 75%. If he takes out the set and two pair and thinks those are strong enough and only does it with a straight and then that overpair, yeah, I'm going to be way behind. If it's flush or the overpair, I'm at 54%. So I think this was kind of interesting. He never really showed any sort of strength. Kept letting me bet the hand. And in the end, he kind of took a stab to try to, I guess, push me off the hand, hoping I had a missed heart draw, maybe. But I don't know. It just doesn't make sense, because if I raise with a 5, I mean, what kind of 5s do I have in my hand? Ace 5, 5 6, 5 4, pocket pair. I'm not thrilled with that bet at the end. Either way, I was going to bet it, so he would be faced with the call. All right, so that was second hand. Hope you enjoyed it. Look for 2 more hands to go up tomorrow.